Yes, got it. Okay, perfect.
And
So
then
now,
I'll put it,
so now,
I'll publish it and send you the link. So this way you can forward it to your group if you want.
all
Okay.
right. So now I really have to watch what I say, Andrea.
That should apply to me, not to you.
Technology. Oh my goodness. It gets better and better.
All right, it's about 5 minutes after the hour. Those people that actually join in after, obviously, we'll just have to catch up, and we can always, like you said, provide them a copy of the slide or the presentation. So for those of you that are on the call now, I just wanted to make a few announcements before Andrea take over. This topic, I think, I mean, after you're done listening to the presentation, you realize why it's important to all of us in the industry, credit unions and business partners in a whole that basically have anything to do with vehicles, repossessions, lease turn-in, you know, whatever you may want to classify it as. But it's important that we learn the responsibilities, the compliance piece of it, what others are doing and what we should be doing. But before Andrea started, I just wanted to make a few announcements about the conference that's coming up in October. We're looking for an in-person, we have a really high level educational packet this year that is well balanced with lending and collections as well. So for those of you who are planning on attending, you can register online. I believe that I sent out the electronic brochure a few days ago and yesterday. We are no longer mailing hard copies. So for those of you who are waiting for that, please make sure you use the electronic version to actually get registered. Again, we're doing scholarships. So if you need help, assistance getting there, email me or email your local chapter presidents and we will make it happen. Doesn't matter how much we do, we want to get all of you there who want to go. So with that, I am going to turn the reins over to Andrea and hope you actually have a wonderful educational session this evening. Andrea, take it over.
Thank you very much, Joel. And thank you everybody for being here. In a second, you should be able to see my screen with a presentation. So hopefully it should appear in a second now. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. I was half joking with Jewel that a few years ago, people even didn't had a half thought about personal information in cars. The tides are very much changing, especially in the last year and a half since the passage of California Consumer Privacy Act. And so today what we want to do is to just make you aware of what information is stored in vehicles, how frequently it happens, and focus from both a regulatory and risk perspective on California. I do know that some of you do business outside of the borders of California. We're more than happy to talk to you about also those situations outside of California. Hold on a second, let me get here the list of participants up so I think everybody's on. I'm assuming we're focusing today again on California and on repossessions. If you do business outside of California, if you do other types of businesses like leasing, or you have customers that are government fleets or business fleets, raise your hand, ask questions in the chat. We'll monitor the chat and make sure we address those questions as we go. And we'll also talk about what are some leading lenders doing about this issue. And this will lead us to talk about best practices and a number of resources that are available to you so you can make informed decisions regarding your specific portfolio. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, so at least you know who you're talking to. My name is Andrea Amico. I'm the CEO and the founder of Privacy4Cars. I started an interest in vehicle privacy and cybersecurity about 7 years ago. I have worked in automotive longer than that, and it really started with me getting involved with some industry associations on on this topic. I've been co-chairing the compliance committee for the International Automotive Remarketers for since they started about 6 years ago. I collaborate extensively with the Auto ISAC, which is the association created by the automakers to disclose cybersecurity problems. I have several disclosures under the belt, so we can talk also about cybersecurity if you want to. And all of that led to people asking me questions about, well, if we wanted to do something about it, what will we do about it? And so this led again to creating Privacy4Cars. And today we've blessed, especially in the last year and a half, with a lot of growth. We are currently available in over 350 locations nationwide, and we continue to expand. So let's get to the topic. Is there data in cars, and what data is that? And the answer is, for most vehicles out there, yes. Of the 273 million vehicles in circulation in the United States, we estimate that 220, 230 million of them actually have the systems capable of capturing personal information. Well, what data is in there? Well, it depends on the cars, right? So if you start even with a 20-year-old vehicle that had just a Bluetooth in it, those cars most likely contain the phone book, the call logs, the text messages, meaning the actual text of the text messages in them. Navigation actually predates. I think that the first car with navigation commercially available in the United States was in 1998. But so again, you may have a 20-year-old car that has navigation. And so with that, you have navigation history, the home address, everywhere people have been. They may be associated, by the way, with garage door codes. Newer cars, there's a lot more than that. What people don't realize is that when you sync your phone via Bluetooth, or you plug into the USB port because you need to charge it, or you want to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, or simply use hands-free, right? In California, it's by law, you have to use hands-free, or you cannot legally use a phone. What happens is that you create a mini clone of the phone inside of the car. And so for newer vehicles, that means that not only you have all the things we talked about on the left, but you may have passwords to accounts, payment systems, IDs, biometrics, all sorts of identifiers, user profiles, and a lot more. And so some examples that we often are asked about is, well, if a car has only Bluetooth, do I need to worry about it? And then I ask them, well, tell me what's in your contact box. Tell me what's in your text messages. Do you have any records of financial transactions? Do you have any records of medical appointments? Do you have, the social security number of your spouse because you don't remember it, so you save it into the contacts? Do you have the information of your banking account? And the problem is that you cannot determine a priori, just looking at the car, whether the information is there or not. And actually, the process of assessing what's in a car is very long and complicated and expensive. But fortunately, the process of deleting the data is not. Sorry, I'm needing a few extra folks in here. How often does this happen? Well, the reason why this is a topic is not only because cars collect data, but because we found this to be a very, very prevalent issue. We know that last year, based on audits, we do a lot of audits. At least 4 out of 5 cars that were resold contain personal information. And specifically for repos, the average statistic that we have for 2020 is 87% of them contain personal information. Again, going back to those steps before, ranging from the contacts, the text messages, all the way down to your calendar entries, your browsing history on your mobile phone, all this kind of stuff. So how this becomes something that financial companies should be thinking about? Well, one of the issues is that the automakers themselves are saying that in their own privacy policies that personal information will be stored in your vehicles and then may be accessible to any owner. And so what you need to do, you need to delete the data. Well, nice of them to put the burden on consumers, and probably all of you that work in compliance understand why they're writing this way. But the problem is that especially for repos, this create a little bit of a catch-22 for financial companies, because now you have all sorts of manufacturers saying that this is something that needs to be deleted, but that vehicle has been taken typically, often without the knowledge of the person, or at least they were not present, or they were not given the opportunity to go and delete the data from the vehicle. I mean, this is how you end up with personal property in cars. This is not any different, right? And so we see that the vast majority of the companies that have policies, they typically start with repos, exactly because it is very likely that data will be left behind, and also because it's very hard to argue that the user, the consumer, should have been the person really deleting the data. The reason why I'm also flagging what rental car companies are doing, they're making the same statements. Well, why are they doing that? Well, the reason is because they've all been sued in California. The lawsuits started to happen towards the tail end of 2019. So this was before the passage of CCPA. Those lawsuits did not allege claims on CCPA. They were simply based on the California constitutional right to privacy and on alleged breaches of data security. So of those 4 lawsuits that have been filed, we're aware of at least of 2 that have been settled. The 6th settlement happened, I believe, 2 months ago. It's sealed, but we know from the disclosure in the court documents that 6th spent at least $500,000, of which $250,000 for the attorneys only from the plaintiff side. And this was an individual settlement without prejudice. What does it mean? It means this is not a class settlement. Tomorrow, another 6th customer could decide to go and sue. Chances are they would get the same treatment, meaning a year and a half of litigation and $500,000 being spent to settle it. The Hertz one was settled as well. And this is particularly interesting to me because Hertz was going through bankruptcy. It would have been very easy for them to just let it go away out of the bankruptcy process. But the fact that the bankruptcy judge decided to pay a settlement to the plaintiff and the plaintiff attorneys ahead of people that were owed money in a bankruptcy of Hertz, I think is a great indicator of what the likely behavior of courts may be if these type of procedures are brought again in the judiciary system. ABG Enterprise is still moving through the court, so I don't have an update on that. But I just also want to point out, this is a very well-known issue of data left in infotainment system. The FTC alone gave guidance on this issue 3 times in the last 4 years. And at the last update of NIADA, the Independent Dealers Association, when they had their government conference, their lobbyist said that personal data has become the #2 regulatory issue.
Okay, now I can hear it. Thank you. I'll open up a ticket after it's done. Thanks, bye.
I don't know who is speaking here. Sorry, I cannot manage that. But again, the dealership are also recognizing this as an issue. They already as the #2 issue after recalls. So again, California focus. What are actually the list of codes that do apply? We believe there's at least 5 of them. Most likely there's a 6th one on biometrics, but those are really based on a city by city. Cars do collect biometrics, by the way, in case you didn't know. And what we see companies being thoughtful about is not just the privacy laws, and we can talk about CCPA and CPRA if you want, but they are particularly thoughtful about data breach notification and data security laws. And the reason is because those laws state that you should not be retaining data that is not retained by the business. I mean, there's obviously no business reason for you to retain somebody's contacts when you're reselling the vehicle. And also that this could qualify as a breach, which means you would have to disclose to both consumers and regulators that possibly personal information has been leaked through the vehicle. So going through complying with those things is, of course, extremely complicated and costly. And so this is why we see, again, companies rather take a more preventative approach, removing the data from the vehicles, documenting it, and this way they do not have to follow all the steps that instead all the other layers of regulation involve. As a lender, you're also Gramm-Leach-Bliley, you're of course under federal laws as well. So you may want to have, to be thoughtful about the privacy rule and all the disclosures that need to be coming with all of that. So I am not a lawyer, and even if I was, I would not be giving legal advice. I think that this is the moment of my safe harbor to say, we're not giving you legal advice, please seek your own legal advice. But these are three things that we recommend that you think about. The first one is there is a reason why OEMs and rental companies, et cetera, make those disclosures, and it is to limit the exposure that by not disclosing it, you may be caught into an unfair and deceptive acts and practice. Those things are really ugly to deal with, as I'm sure you know. So we believe that the right thing to do is that both in the web page where you have your auto lending, disclosures, and in the paperwork, that you do have some language that discloses the fact vehicles themselves collect personal information. And can I ask people to please mute themselves? I'm trying to see if I can do it from here. Let me see, just give me 1 second, Joel. All right, I think I muted most people here. The one thing where I warn you against is, please do not attempt to list what information is collected by cars. It is super, super, super different on a car-by-car basis. And also OEMs have different policies. So we recommend that you do mention that vehicle collect personal information. Maybe you want to refer to the manufacturer and leave it at that, because any additional guidance may actually be erroneous and they change all the time. The second thing that we want to make you aware of is that, again, for those of you who are based in California, the California Consumer Privacy Act requires that you offer at least 2 ways for consumers to easily ask for the information to be deleted, the records to be modified, etc., and you have 45 days to respond. Again, I don't think you really want to set up a machine and a process to actually accept these requests and respond, because that tends to be more complex, more risky, more expensive than having a preventative approach. But again, you want to make sure that you do actually list multiple ways for consumers to reach out and ask for the personal information, including the personal information stored in vehicles, to be removed. The third one is that, and this is really what we're seeing a lot of, this is what's going to bring me to the next page on best practices. We recommend that you do have a policy that mandates the deletion of the personal information from repossessed vehicles. Word of warning, and we'll get into that into a couple of detail pages. We have plenty of evidence that a policy alone does not work, but not having a policy is not helpful either. So just be aware your work is not done just by having a policy, just like with everything else in compliance. But it is typically a good way to get started. So again, disclose the information is personal information collected by vehicles. Make sure you have your CCPA disclosures and right to delete on your website, and start working on a policy. Any questions so far? Cool. All right, so let me show you why we're saying that policies alone do not work. So we did a study in last winter, and we sent mystery shoppers to 72 very large, very reputable dealerships in California and Massachusetts. About 60% of the sample is in California. And I promise you that if you think of a large franchise dealer in California, chances are they're part of this sample, okay? So we sent consumers over there. they found information at 88% of those dealerships. If those dealerships did not have a policy specifically that mentioned data collected by cars, the chance of a consumer finding data by test driving one or two cars of their choice was between 93 and 94%. So basically almost all of them. Not surprisingly, if you're not even looking at the problem, it will manifest itself. What was interesting to us is that a full third of dealerships insisted when in front of the consumer that they did have a policy that requires them to remove and delete the personal information of the previous owner before the car is posted for sale. And of course, they were jumping through hoops and trying to explain how it was possible that the one car that we're driving right now was the one car that somehow slipped through the cracks. Well, we know that the crack is about the size of the Grand Canyon because 75% of the dealerships that did have a policy were found out of compliance with their own policy. So again, make sure you have a policy, but also that you have a way to monitor and manage it just like any other policy, because having a policy that does not live and breathe is a liability. The other thing that we know is that we started to see a number of players in the industry saying, well, no problem, we'll delete the personal information. We have very expert inspectors. They can go and do this because they know how the Kias and the Toyotas work or whatever else, right? So we've done plenty of audits. We know that that's not the case. We know that relying on the expertise of the inspectors typically yields somewhere around the 70% deletion rates, meaning 30% of the cars typically still contain personal information after the process. Most importantly, you can't really measure it and monitor it. As with anything that you do in compliance, what you really want to do is to have the receipts, right, of what you're doing. So this is the process we helped many financial companies set up. And basically what we do is that we partner with their service providers. We provide them with a giant compendium and encyclopedia basically of how all the systems work. Their personnel just scans the VIN and then we'll tell them exactly what they need to do, what modules are in there, what information is captured, how to get rid of it. All of this is monitored. We certify and warranty those deletions with a $5 million warranty, and then we publish them, which means that, again, there's a paper trail around that. And again, the advantage is that no matter who you use, as long as they're part of this network, you get the records in one simple and standardized format. You get certificates like this if you choose to elect this process. And if you want information, just reach out. Again, as I mentioned, we are at over 350 locations, so hopefully we are near you. So what we want to provide here is, a list of references. So here's a small list of customers that do require the deletion of personal information from repos, that they elected to have a process that is measurable in place. And also, I'm sure you guys know people at those companies. If you don't, we're more than happy to provide you with references. And also feel free to just call your local auctions in case you want to know, what they're doing about it. We also want to give you a number of tools. So there's a number of workshops that we have recorded over the last few months. Typically, we have external experts that participate into those workshops. So we did just one for the National Association of Dealer Council. We haven't put it up on the website yet, but we did one earlier this year with Randy Herrick from the National Auto Finance Association. And so, you can go and see what those independent third-party experts say about this issue so that you have a more well-rounded perspective on the issue. The other thing that we did, for those of you that do business not just in California, but also outside of California, we created a giant compendiums of laws. So if you click on this link at the bottom down here, it's going to take you to a web page that has literally a map of the United States. And if you click on a state, is going to take you to the list of statutes that apply to personal information collected by vehicles, and you get a link to the law. So we hope that this tool is going to make the legal review that you should do more quick and more transparent. I think it's important you guys get independently the facts so you can make an independent decision on how to take action if you choose to get actions on this specific issue. So in sum, again, and I want to open then the floor for questions. I wanted to leave plenty of room for questions. Again, number one is cars collect, and by the way, growingly so. We kept doing those statistics over the years. The numbers get worse every year. There's more information and more frequently stored in vehicles that are resold. Two, one thing that we didn't talk about, but probably this is a good time to do it, is that during the legislative session in California, the vehicles actually came up in multiple comments. And actually CCPA allowed a change for allowing for the personal information of people to not be removed only for the purpose of serving notices for recalls and safety issues with cars. Clearly, this is not what applies in this case. But during that session, the legislative process clearly spelled out that cars are covered devices under CCPA because they are connected devices under the definition of the law. And also that the data is personal information under the law because it's defined as any piece of information can be reconducted to an individual or a household. So again, simple things like the home address, clearly you can bring it back to a household. The unique identifier of your phone, clearly being brought back to an individual, et cetera, et cetera. Those information are routinely found in cars. And again, there's also other laws that apply. You can go to the page that I showed you before to go and find this information. A growing number of auto lenders are finding prudent to remove the information. Again, there are many possible approaches to this. One thing I want to bring up is that we have recently reached an agreement with the American Recovery Association. And so if you choose to use a process like ours, you can decide to do it not just at the auctions, you can actually engage with your repossession companies and forwarders, and they should be soon be able to provide you with a process that supports this data deletion. We have not talked about it today, but there are additional benefits from removing the personal information, anything from reducing arbitrations to improving the value of the vehicles to a number of other indirect benefits that are not just privacy concerns, but safety and security concerns with vehicles. Again, I'm not planning to address any of those, but if you have questions, I'm happy to take them. This is how you can reach out to us. Again, you can go to Privacy4Cars for finding those tools and resources. If you have any questions, you can send a note at info@Privacy4Cars. My personal email is Andrea, ANDREA @privacy4cars.com, so you can reach out directly to me. And with that, Jewel, I'll give the microphone back to you, and happy to take questions if you want.
All right, thank you, Andrea, for the information provided. I see that there's at least one person that's asked for a copy. For those of you who would like a copy of the recorded version, email me and I can provide it to you, or you can actually email Andrea directly with questions. Since we have time, if there's any question, so there's one question in the question box.
And Joel, if it's okay for you, what I will do is that I'll turn this document, this presentation into a PDF. This way you can forward it to your members. And then I will put the recording again on our YouTube channel. I'll give you the link. So if you want, you can send an email with both. And so if people didn't have the chance to hear it today, they can always go back. Okay.
I think that's an excellent idea. There are a couple questions in the inbox, so let's get to that now. It says, what is the average cost of certification?
So we do not sell the solution directly to consigners like yourself. We partner with service providers, so you can get the service through, again, auctions, repossession companies, auto inspection companies, etc. The average pricing ranges somewhere from the mid-teens to upwards of that. Repos tend to be more expensive because they tend to have issues, meaning sometimes they need to cut a key, sometimes they need to jump the car, and so there's extra processing work that needs to go with it. So just, again, reach out to your service providers, but anything between $15 to $25 is pretty much in the norm. But again, there's reasons why there may be deviation from that number. And again, what's included with that is not just the deletion of the data. You get your certificate, and all of those are wrapped within a $5 million warranty that covers any issues that are caused by us. So if we tell people to delete things a certain way, but data is left behind, we're on the hook for up to $5 million per claim.
So Andrea, so if someone, let's say, were to request certification, do they contact you directly, or do they go to your website directly? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways.
Yeah,
so if you
Thanks. Good.
Hello? I don't know, somebody was jumping in.
Yeah.
The way you can do these certificates is, let me see, I'm sorry, who is, let me mute a couple of people here. There we go. So the way you access the certificates is in 2 ways. If you go through an auto auction, if you are on a system called Auto OEMs, which is very standard, it's a central data repository for vehicle data that goes through physical auctions, we are fully integrated with them. And so when you log in into Auto OEMs to check on your portfolio and setting floors and whatever else you're doing to remarket your vehicles, there's a tab in their inspection report that is called Privacy4Cars. That's where you get these reports. So you get a high-level summary of what has happened, who deleted the personal information, what information was deleted, when did this happen, et cetera, et cetera. And you also get a link to this PDF. If you go through a member of the American Recovery Association, we are in the process of integrating with them. And so in the next few weeks, you will also be able to get those records and those certificates straight from your repossession company. And Les, I know that you are on the line, so I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and add something to describe how the process is going to work for ARA members. Les McCook.
I think he's there, but I don't see him unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Les.
Yep. Okay, sorry. I had to get the right numbers pushed. Thank you, Andre, for mentioning that. Everyone, yes, the ARA licensed this technology for Andrea for our members to utilize. Like he said, we're in the final stages of the integration, should be through by July the 7th for the public announcement. It'll be an easy process for us to document and provide this documentation for you for years for follow-up. And if there's anything we can do to help, or if I can address your questions, please reach out to me or one of our members, and we'll be glad to assist you and walk you through the process. Thank you again for the presentation, Joel, and for Andrea.
Thanks, Les. There is another question that was just entered. Does Privacy4Cars work with larger auctions like Odessa, Braziers, etc.?
Yes. So we work with most of the large auctions. Again, we are today at 360 something locations in the United States, including the big auction groups and many leading independents. If you work with independents that are not part of the Privacy4Cars network, let us know. again, send us a note at info@privacy4cars.com. We'd be more than happy to try to bring them on board. Again, the advantage is that it doesn't matter if you have one of Les's members doing it, if ADESA does it, Manam does it, America's Auto Auction does it, whoever does it, you will be getting the records in the same format, which is going to make your life much easier from a compliance standpoint. In fact, most of our financial customers that we're serving directly, again, through these partner channels, what they do is that they pull the records from Auto AMS or the other portals, and they send them to their internal auditing function, and they become the official records of compliance. And again, having everything done in a way in which you can do it by just clicking somewhere and you get all the records in a standard way just makes things easier.
If there's any other question, I don't see any other question in the chat box.
If you don't mind, a couple of other things. So if you are in California, one thing you should keep in mind is that the law applies to California residents. So if I'm a California resident and I buy a car or I sell a car or is repossessed in Texas, actually it's still under CCPA. So please make sure that when you set your policies and procedures around this, that you're mindful of what laws actually do apply. It's not just the state where the repossession happens. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Again, I'm going to pull up my personal information up here, so this way you know how to reach out to us. And I will add my personal email in the chat right now so that you also know how to directly get a hold of me if you need to.
It's Andrea, thank you so much. You've covered a lot during this session. For those of you that's on this call that maybe your credit union or your institution have large volumes of repossession, I would strongly suggest you take a look at this policy. Contact Andrea if you need some guidance. And as Les mentioned, obviously, ARA is also there as well. So for those of you on this call, credit unions or auction house, either one, if you think that this is something that you need to do, especially from a compliance side for us as credit union folks, we need to be sure that we are protecting our organization from potential, lawsuits, because obviously we can see they're actually beginning to pop up in the pipeline. So for those of you who have asked for a copy, I'm going to send you the PDF copy of it. Andrea is going to convert it, and I'll make sure I get it to you. Again, Andrea, thank you so much for the information. I think it was very worth the while, and I know that the rest of those folks on this call probably appreciate it as well. So thank you all for listening, and
appreciate it.
we hope to have another session, probably a few more sessions. We are actually starting to reconvene our in-person meeting. There's a few chapters having local meetings. San Diego tomorrow, Sacramento and Fresno in July. And I think the southern chapters will probably restart in August. So we're looking forward to seeing you in person. But most of all, we're looking forward to seeing all of you at the conference this year. So thanks everyone for joining, and Andrea and Michelle, thank you so much for setting this up for us.
Joe, thank you very much for the opportunity. And again, thank you everybody for being here. We'll get you the material. And I look forward to meeting some of you if you're going to be at the conference, because we're going to be there too. So thank you for inviting us, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good day, everyone.